Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 204. Today I'm going to talk about the Scoundrels of Skullport expansion for Lords of Waterdeep. Just a quick component note, I have everything from the base game and expansion in this box. Just remove the insert. And the nice thing about this box is it closes all the way. So let me show you the new stuff in here, and then I'll come back and tell you what I think. Just another quick component note, I went and got these D&D-ples here. You can find a link on Board Game Geek, which I'll post in the description there. So instead of like the black cubes, I now have these little rogue figures here. And instead of the purple cubes, I have these little wizards. And I really like these because they remind me of the avatars in like Ultima 4 and things like that. So here's your white one, that's clerics, and then you've got your orange fighters there. These are pretty cool and they add a lot to the game, but I think they're about 25 bucks for the set of them. Just really cool, and they fit back in the box fine. So what do we get with this expansion? Well, you can see here now, here's all of the quests from the base game and the expansion combined. Now there's basically two expansions that come with the game. So what you can do is you can either take one of the expansions, which is considered Undermountain, or the other one, which is considered Skullport. Take all the cards, intrigue cards, buildings, and quest cards, and shuffle them in with the base set. Or you can take one of the expansions and do that. Or if you want to combine both of them, which to me is the best way to play the game, is you go through and remove a certain amount of the cards from the base game and a certain amount of the cards from the base intrigue cards and the base buildings, and then shuffle both expansions in with the rest of them, and then you just kind of play from there, and that keeps the distribution nice for everything. So you got a whole mess of new intrigue cards, a whole mess of new quests, a whole mess of new buildings. You can see there's a lot of buildings in the game now. You've also got components here for 6 players, so we've got some gray pieces here, gray agents, gray marker, gray building tokens there. They do give you extra agents for each of the colors, so you can basically play what's called a long game. So you start the game off with an extra agent, based on the number of players. So in a 2-player game, you start with 5 agents in your hand, for use, and then you still have one that you get at turn 5. And that's also, I think, the best way to play, because it just adds a lot more happening from the beginning of the game, because you're going to add these new boards as well, and these give you, new buildings to put agents on, and it just gives you a lot more options right out of the gate. Now I'll talk about these boards in a second, and one of the new mechanics in the game. But the other thing you're going to get are these new Lord cards here. Instead of them giving you points based on the different quest types you get, these do a little bit something different here. So the first guy here, Sangalor, which just looks like Cthulhu. So he says at the end of the game you may score 4 points for each non-mandatory this kind of quest. So this basically means any of the Skullport quests. So you can see here the new cards have these little markers on them, and the intrigue cards and the buildings have the same symbol here. So these are part of the Skullport module, and these are part of the Undermountain module here. So again, this guy will give you 4 points basically for every quest that's a Skullport quest. So that's pretty cool. It's not too different. This guy here, at the end of the game, you score 4 points for each of the Undermountain quests. Here's another one. At the end of the game, you score 3 points for each non-mandatory quest. So basically 3 points for every quest. So that's interesting. And then you have this guy here. At the end of the game, you score 5 points for each quest you completed that's worth 10 or more points. That one's a kind of an interesting one as well. I'll talk about this one in a second. And then this gal here is also very interesting. At the end of the game, you choose one quest type, and you get 6 points for each of those. So that's pretty interesting. So this guy here, I think maybe is worthless. I'm not sure. At the end of the game, you score 4 points for each corruption in your tavern. Now, I'm going to explain corruption in a second, but we had quite a discussion last night after we played this game about some of these new lords and which were stronger or not as strong. This guy definitely seems like he's not as strong, and I almost have a suspicion that I won't include him in the deck of lords to shuffle up. But, we'll see. And then this gal here that lets you score 6 points for a specific type of quest seems to be the strongest. So there may be a slight balance issue with these. We'll have to play it out some more. But if there is with 1 or 2 of them, we'll just throw them out. It's no big deal. But these add a little nice twist to your endgame scoring. So let's take a look at the 2 boards here. So we've got the Undermountain and the Skullport boards. And it's very interesting, kind of the theme here. So Undermountain is basically a dungeon. And it's underneath Waterdeep, from what I understand. And so the quests and the entry cards are a little bit sort of, I don't know, power creep isn't the right word, but they're a little bit more powerful, a little bit more drastic than what you have in the base game. And then, whereas the Skullport stuff has a little bit of a drawback to the activities that you'll take with Skullport. So let's first focus on Undermountain here. So we've got 3 new buildings. You just set this on the side, and it's 3 buildings that people can go into. You've got the Hall of Mirrors, basically give you any cube that you want, or an orange and a black. You've got the Grim Statue. This lets you draw 2 entry cards, so that's pretty cool. And then this entry well here lets you draw a quest card and then play an entry card. So here's another spot to play entry cards besides Waterdeep Harbor. So that is also very interesting. Now, if we take a look at Skullport here, this is some banana stuff here. So we take a look at this here. You can get 2 orange, 2 black, and then this new sort of skull-looking symbol here is called Corruption. I'll talk about what Corruption is in a second. So that's a lot of cubes there for just a spot. And then here at Hall of the Voice, you basically get a quest card, you get an intrigue card, you get $4, and you get a corruption. So you get a lot of stuff, but you get corruption, which is bad. And then Skull Island here, 2 of any cube you want, that's very strong. And then you get a corruption. So what is corruption? So here we have our corruption board here. So certain actions, certain buildings, different things will make you take corruption. So when you take corruption, you always take it from the lowest spot here. So this spot always starts with 1, and we have 3 on the rest of these. I take a corruption, add it to my supply. Maybe I get some more corruption. Maybe some other people grab corruption. So we start taking these off of here. So what's going to happen is at the end of the game, each corruption piece that you have is going to be worth negative points, equal to the cleared space here. So if we had just taken 2 off of here, there's still 1 on this -4. So each of these is going to be worth -3 points at the end of the game. Now there are some actions that will tell you to return corruption, and there you just put it on sort of the lowest available space. So as we start returning corruption, the negative value is going to go down. And then other actions will tell you to maybe discard corruption out of the game, or even remove it off the track directly and remove it out of the game. So this is a very sort of interesting thing, because a lot of the actions that involve corruption are going to be a lot more powerful, give you a lot more stuff, but you've got to take this corruption marker here as a drawback. Which brings us back to this lord here, the Xanthar. So again, he says at the end of the game you score 4 points for each corruption in your tavern. Well, that doesn't just turn these into 4 points and not negative. So if at the end of the game, if you've got a bunch of corruption in your tavern and it's worth -4, basically all of this guy does is basically make that corruption worth 0 points. Which is cool because your corruption is not hurting you, but you're not getting any of these bonus points here like everybody else is. Now if corruption was down to -2 or something, you'd be netting positive points, but if it's down that low, you're not going to have that much in your supply. So I mean, maybe this guy would be a little bit better if he was like, he gave you 6 points for corruption, so you had a better shot of maybe scoring positive points there. Even then, I don't think it would be worth a lot. But the one thing that sort of caveat that is there's a lot more powerful things you can do aside from your bonus points at the end of the game. So he may not be totally awful, but I'm pretty sure he is. So let's take a look at a couple of the new buildings and the new intrigue cards and things like that to give you an idea of some of the flavor that's involved. So here's some of the intrigue cards. You can see this one's from Undermountain. Basically it says take a white cube from the supply and place it in your tavern, and then place another one on an action space. So a lot of these are going to let you take extra cubes or people here from the supply and then let you place them on action spaces to make them a little bit more desirable for people to go to. So you can get different ones that will work with the different types of workers there. So here's another one here. This one is from Skullport. So place corruption from the corruption track on 2 different action spaces. So the counteract to that is that you're going to be placing corruption maybe on some of the more tasty spaces on the board, and whenever somebody goes there, obviously they have to take the corruption. So that's interesting here. Each opponent with more corruption than you takes a corruption from the track. So that's a little bit of a take that aspect. Here's a cool one here. you draw 3 entry cards, and each opponent draws an entry card. Again, this is an Undermountain. You can see the Undermountain is sort of growing and making things easier for people, whereas the Skullport stuff makes things a little bit harder. So they do kind of balance each other out, I think. Another one here, take $2 from the supply, and then you can take the first player marker. That's a neat way to get the first player marker without having to go to that spot. So you spend $2 here, return up to 2 corruption from your tavern back to the track. And then each opponent can play $4 and then return 1 corruption. So there's some ways, again, to get rid of corruption. So here's take 2 white cubes from the supply and a corruption from the track, and then each opponent can get 1 white cube and then 1 corruption. Another one with 4 orange, and then you get a corruption. Each opponent can get 2 orange and a corruption. Here's a cool one here. Draw 2 entry cards. As you draw, you can play it immediately as part of this action. That's pretty cool. Here's another neat one. Give 1 opponent a white cleric there from your tavern, and then you score 8 points. So you're giving them a cube, and then you get the 8 points. So these are pretty cool. There's a lot of different new effects and stuff, and it makes the whole intrigue idea even more interesting than it was in the base game. So next, let's take a look at some of these quests here. You can see this is an Undermountain quest. This one gives you 40 points for 1 quest, but you can see all of the stuff you have to get for it, and 4 purple cubes, which isn't the easiest thing to come by. Unless you try to go to the corruption route, then you can get those a little easier. So again, this is Undermountain. It gives you 40 points, but the Skullport stuff, the corruption is going to make that easier, but with the drawback. But that's a lot of points there for a quest. Here we have this fun alchemical research. Not too much stuff. You get a ton of cash. That's $10. But you also get 3 corruption. So end of the game, not so great, but early game, that can be quite good. Here's another one here. These are interesting that have this. So you get a white and orange, and then 4 of whatever you want. The reward is $15, but you get to draw a card for each purple that you used to supply for those 4 cubes. So there's a few like this that let you sort of choose the cubes, and then they have some effect based on the color that you put in there. Here's another one here, and there's a few like this one as well. This is a good example. So you can see this is Extort Aurora, right? Well, this has to do with Aurora's Realm Shop, which is over here. That's Aurora's Realm Shop, and that normally gives you $4. But when you score this, you get 8 points, and then whenever you sign an agent to Aurora's Realm Shop, you can take an additional $4, but then you can take a corruption. So you can go there and get $8, which is, that's not chump change there. So there's a few like that that interact with some of these original areas on the board. That's really cool. Here's a really neat one here. So you pay all the stuff, you get $9. It says whenever you purchase a building, you can remove a corruption from your tavern. So this is, get this out early, you get some bunch of corruption, but then you can buy some buildings and then your corruption will go down. Here's another one, and there are a few like this one as well. So you're going to build all of this stuff up here. Only gives you 10 points, but whenever you take a warfare quest, you get 2 orange cubes. So just by taking it out of the inn, you're going to be able to get more cubes that are related to that type. Because remember, the warfare and the warrior stuff kind of goes together. The skullduggery and the rogue kind of goes together. So there's a quest like that as well that gives you black cubes every time you take a skullduggery, and etc. Here's another Skullport one here. So this is, a few cubes, not very many points, only 5. And you get a cube of your choice, and you return up to 2 corruption from your supply. And then this one here is pretty interesting. So a bunch of stuff here, $8, 13 points, and then immediately build all face-up buildings in Builder's Hall. So you're going to put all of those under your control immediately. So that's going to also add up to a lot of good stuff for you. So a lot of cool quests. So let's take a look at some of the quests here. You can see again the icons there. That show you which module they come from. Let's just start with a nutty one. This one, you go here and you can play 3 intrigue cards. That is just fun and off the chain. Here's another one here. You take 2 purple cubes, and you place a purple cube or wizard out onto an action space, and you can actually place them on buildings, as well, not just the printed spaces on the board. This one, 1 of every cube plus a corruption. This one lets you remove a corruption from your tavern and then place it on an action space for somebody else to get. A cube that you want and play a card. Lets you take 4 black cubes and then place 2 black cubes on 2 different spaces, etc. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the overview I think this is a must-buy expansion for the game. Basically I mostly play this with my family. I also played it with my game group. Haven't played this expansion with my game group yet. But we really enjoyed this game in the family, and basically we decided we're never going to play it without both modules thrown in there. It adds a lot of extra sort of flavor and actually theme into the game, because you have these very diverse sort of styles of play, with the Undermountain providing lots of riches and just lots of extravagance and lots of it kind of dumps a lot into the economy, if you will. But then you've got the Skullport side of it, which is again, the drawback and the corruption and all that stuff. You've got to really kind of weigh your choices, and it seems like we play more intrigue cards with the expansions added in. There's a lot more dynamics that are going on there, and that really is, to me, is what sets the game apart mechanically from other worker placement cards, is that whole intrigue thing, especially the Waterdeep Harbor, where you can place a guy there, play your intrigue card, and then leave him around in hopes that some other spaces that are really good are going to be available. And just those extra layers of choices that are going to be in the game. I mean, we play with the long game, or supposedly where you get that extra agent to start with, and that's good because you have the extra spaces on the board to use. So it's just a lot more wealth of choice, especially right at the beginning of the game, to sort of tack and maneuver your strategy. So again, I really like it. I really recommend getting those D&D pulls. It really kind of adds into that sort of chromatic flavor, if you will. But it's a very fun game. It will add a little bit of time, especially if you play the long game with the extra agent. But it definitely makes it a little bit richer of an experience there. And honestly, I know people like to bag on this being a pasted-on theme, but I don't think you understand that when you put the workers down, these are actual agents going and doing work at a different spot on the in the different buildings or the different dungeons and things like that, and recruiting workers and doing different things. To me, it comes across very much in a thematic sense, more than probably most worker placement games. I mean, these are actual workers, actual agents that you're sending out to do your bidding, and you're this fat nasty lord that is manipulating everything behind the scenes. And that really it suits this theme and this mechanic very, very well. So more than most worker placement games, which are very arbitrary. At least they can be. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents. I definitely think this is a game that is going to have legs. I think it's going to be talked about probably for years to come. So I think it's excellent, and it's kind of right in that nice vein of a Ticket to Ride or a Catan. It's definitely easy to get into, easy with the gateway game, and then this expansion really just adds on that. Just an extra layer of fun, just a lot more stuff happening, a lot more stuff going on, a lot more dramatic things are going to happen. The corruption is a very interesting thing, because as the corruption disappears, more people are going to have corruption, and you're going to try to get out of it at the end of the game. And if you're out of it, maybe you can start blowing it away so that it's discarded out of the game permanently, so those that do have an abundance of corruption are going to get stuck with it even more. So yeah, it's cool. There's a lot going on. Again, some of the lords, I'm not sure how balanced they are, especially the one that gives you 6 points for a quest type of your choice versus the guy that you get 4 points for corruption. I think that doesn't necessarily work, but I don't know. We'll see. It's not something like if I get stuck with it, then fine. Other people will maybe complain, but I'm not a big complainer when it comes to that kind of thing. So we'll see. I got a hunch that it's not going to be something that we'll include. But hey, if that's the only problem is I have to take out a lord, big whoop. So anyway, thanks.